Kia ora koutou. So called Robertson. I'm from here in Aotearoa, Christchurch, and delighted to be here to spare some time. I'm supposed to take a picture. Right, sorry, just introduce myself here. So I'm here today. Rose asked me to talk a little bit about mindfulness. How's my speaking? Is it hearing me okay? Yep, good. Let me know. Put your hand up if I start talking fast. It's a bad habit. So just let me know if you're not hearing me. I was going to give a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation to start with about mindfulness, an overview about what mindfulness is. We'll have a bit of a practice, have a go at mindfulness, and then there's plenty of time for some discussion and questions afterwards. As Rose said there, she's recording that, but I don't want that to curtail the conversation, so it doesn't need to, if it's not appropriate to go out, then that will be not put out. So I think it's really nice to be able to talk within a group and with confidence and confidentiality as the basis. So I'll move over here. Is that better if I'm over here for talking? Is it alright if I stand here? It's okay? Great.
That's good, thanks.
And I want to make it quite casual. So any questions as I'm going along, do just ask me. If it's getting boring, let me know. I want this for your benefit, not mine. So just let me know what's useful. And is it, first of all, I'm just curious if anyone here practiced mindfulness, or is it been one over there? Yeah, a couple. Okay, good. So some new to it, some got some experience. So it'll be good to hear from people with experience around it later on as well. What's been useful or not in your own path. So mindfulness. So there's a picture of a person and a dog going for a walk, and a lovely sunny day in the park and green trees, and the dog is seeing the sunny feeling, probably seeing the warmth of the sun and seeing the trees and kind of what's his experiences. The human's busy thinking about the bad traffic and the awful music and the problems at home, and so the mind is full, but it's not mindfulness. Or another example here, the chap who's obviously getting ready to go to work, got all his things together, been busy thinking about it so much. He says, "Let me call you back, Hector, I just realised I forgot the van." So the state our minds can get into when we're really caught up and thinking, but not so much present here and now. So most of you probably have heard of mindfulness, but a definition for it is it's giving our full and open-hearted attention to what is immediately occurring. It's physically, the body, and mentally, it's going on in our heads, within us and around us. So it's not excluding anything. Mindfulness is just really being aware of what's happening right here and now. One of the key qualities of it is paying attention to this present moment, but doing so with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. What often happens when we start noticing what's going on is we bring judgments or reactivity or to ourselves or to others. And so really wanting to cultivate a sense of kindness to ourselves and to our experience, and to be curious, just to be curious in actually what's happening. Just like right now, you might want to take a moment to just notice what it's like being here and now. It's like for me, I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm kind of aware of you all sitting here. I can kind of hear my voice, see a bit of sunshine outside. Just there's a bit of thinking going on about what I'm going to talk about next. So that's the sort of thing you might just notice now, sitting in the chair, just what you're aware of, maybe directly feeling the softness of those lovely chairs against your back and your body, aware that you're listening. Maybe feeling yourself taking a couple of breaths. That's really what mindfulness is. It's nothing too fancy pants. It's really just knowing our direct experience of the moment. So it's, in the last couple of decades, it's really become a quite popular thing here in Aotearoa. Workplaces often have mindfulness training now. In education, so I was involved for 2 or 3 years in helping set up the Pause, Breathe, Smile program, which is a program that's been run out through schools, primary schools in New Zealand. And it's just offering the opportunity for young children to learn how to be in the present moment, how to become aware of their emotions and their thoughts, and how to work with them a bit more skillfully. Yeah.
What does PBS stand for?
Yeah, the PBS is the pause, breathe, smile.
Right.
So actually the children came up with that name when they said that we're going to introduce mindfulness in schools, and they taught them. And so what it was is that whenever, any time of day or when you're wanting to practice, you just take a moment to pause, and then we get the kids to put their hands on their bellies and they do like 3 mindful breaths. So they just feel their body breathing 3 times. And then an encouragement to smile, just as a way of encouraging the nervous system to relax and know that things are okay. So pause, breathe, smile is the name the kids came up with. So it's used in a range of health areas. It's been used in prisons, in sport. The All Blacks have their very own mindfulness coach, lots of other sports as well. And it's really integrated now with a range of psychological, therapeutic bodywork type modalities. Oh, we've gone flash and used bullet points. Very good. Okay, so the benefits of mindfulness. One of the things that we notice when we sort of start gathering our attention and come a bit more into the body and start to see a bit of what's happening in our thinking, that we can have a really strong negativity bias. And so it can be a bit like the brain has a natural tendency to stick on to the negative or the difficult or the hard things, the things that bring us down or are more difficult for us, and a bit like Velcro, we really click onto them. And then we have these positive experiences like, I don't know, noticing the sunshine out there, or someone saying something nice to us, and it just kind of like slides right off and we're back onto the next thing. So it can be a bit of we can start seeing this like tendency of the mind to grab hold of the difficult and just to let the other stuff fly by like it's not really important. Apparently, I don't know how someone measured this, we have 80,000 thoughts a day, and 95% of them we had yesterday. That's another thing we notice when we start practicing mindfulness, is that the mind just tends to get into its groove and have the same old thinking, the same old stories, the same old patterns. And it's really lucky that our speech bubbles, our little thought bubbles, can't be seen by everybody because the stuff that goes on in our minds can get a little tedious. Right, I'm going to see if I brought my prop. Unfortunately, the prop I was going to bring my grandchildren broke recently. But one of the things we talked about when we were teaching the children, and I find it quite helpful for myself, is we talk about sort of the zones that we can be in our minds. And the green zone is when we're feeling relatively calm and relaxed. There's nothing that's really triggering us. We're kind of, in a place that feels like our happy place or our place that we feel okay. And they call that the green zone. But generally at those times the nervous system's reasonably relaxed, we're generally feeling okay, we can think quite clearly. And then things happen for us, around health or around triggers, seeing people or things that make us anxious, and we go up into the red zone. Or things that or an intense emotion might come through. And when the red zone tends to be our thoughts speed up, we can't sort of think quite so clearly, our body gets more painful or more tired, or a whole range of things can happen when we're sort of in that zone. And so when we can recognise that, there's the potential to come back down into the green zone. We can intentionally relax. Once we know it, recognise it, we think, oh yeah, here I go, I'm up in my anxious, what's this talk going to be like this afternoon? I'm in that sort of anxious zone like I was this morning. I go, oh okay, the mind's getting anxious, the body's a bit restless. I can actually take a moment to do something about that. I can sort of breathe and come back and relax a bit more. So with the children, we talked a bit about this with these mind jars, we called them. And so, can you see that's relatively transparent? It's sort of this, you can see through it reasonably the green thing. And what happens when we get into the red zone is things get stirred up. And so it's like those old snow globes you might have had when you were younger. And thoughts and things start racing around. And the more that happens, and the more caught up in it we get, the more we keep shaking it. We keep thinking, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and that has an impact on the mind and on the body, and things are swirling around. But if we can have that moment going, oh, things are swirling around, this is hard, I feel unwell, I'm tired, it's really tricky in my brain, and we can somehow, do some relaxing and calming of ourselves. Just noticing it can be helpful, and then just recognising what that's like and calming. And eventually, if we just stay with that and stop shaking it up, then the glitter in this case starts settling down and calming down, and we can start seeing some of those individual thoughts, we can see a bit what's going on, and we're not so caught up in it. And over time, it relaxes and becomes clear again. And so some of the benefits of this mindfulness is it can enhance our ability to appreciate life's beauty. So those Teflon moments, we can actually go, oh, actually this is a really nice moment. I'm feeling the sun warming my back. Oh, I can just stay here for a moment and actually feel the benefit of it. Oh, that's nice. Or actually someone just said something nice to me and I can feel my heart warm a bit. Actually, I'm going to stay here for a moment and just feel the impact of that. So there's opportunities to appreciate life's beauty a little bit more, and then to respond but not to react so habitually to life's challenges. And of course this can be helpful for us with our anxiety or depression or physical and mental health. So mindfulness has sort of been around in the West for the last few decades. It was extracted out of some of the Eastern teachings when some Western people went over there and brought it back to the sort of States and England and so on. And started to be integrated sort of out of an Eastern cultural context into more of a Western scientific paradigm, I guess. And so there's been a lot of research done with it. I did a Google, I put Google galore, I did a Google this morning on mindfulness and CFS or ME or long COVID. And the internet goes nuts now. So in the last 20, 30 years there's been a really big integration and marrying of this idea of mindfulness that's come from more of an Eastern approach into a Western world. And also what's happened with that is when mindfulness was taken out of the Eastern traditions, so the whole of stuff around that, like ethics and compassion and some of the heart qualities that were kind of left behind a bit. We just had this idea of sitting and being aware of what's happening. And so over time, more of these compassion practices and kindness practices and ethics have been brought in to complement mindfulness. So it's really got a more grounded and sort of full life supporting qualities about it. And so what can happen is, like with the mind jar, we can start seeing the reactivity of the mind. And then we can start to choose actions, personal, subtle actions or bigger actions in the world that are based on our deeper values and our deeper wishes, rather than more superficial or habitual responses, reactivity, our dislikes or out of confusion. So, when we, when something happens and someone annoys us and our reaction is just to slam the door and walk out, whatever it is, we actually have the opportunity instead to go, oh, actually I'm feeling really something right now. I'm just going to take a moment to notice that. And in that moment it gives us other options for what we might do next. There's a quote from Viktor Frankl: between the stimulus, the person saying something horrible to us, and the response, us maybe habitually slamming the door, there's a space. And this space is our power to choose our response. And our response lies our growth and our freedom. So it's talking about this powerful little moment, whether that be in interaction with someone else or for ourselves, and how we might talk to ourselves, or how we might support ourselves when we're feeling unwell, whether we might push ourselves through something or get down on ourselves or whatever. We can start seeing those responses. It gives us a little more choice. How are we going? Everyone's still here? No one's walked out yet? Alright. Okay. I'll talk about 2 or 3 more slides and then we'll have a go at this mindfulness to see what it actually means. So mindfulness practice is like a training. It's something that we can do any time, but we can practice it and then it can become more sort of integrated part of how we are in the world nowadays. And so we can become aware of what Viktor Frankl called the stimulus, and that quote was there, between the stimulus and the response. We become aware of the stimulus through our senses. So it always I don't know why it blew me away when I learnt this, but our whole life, the only way that we experience life is through the 5 senses of seeing, of hearing, of tasting, of touching, of smelling, and our thinking. That's the totality of life comes to us through those things. And so we really, in this mindfulness, we're training to become more aware of those direct experiences of seeing. Normally we might see and then we're off in a thought about it, or we hear something and we're reacting to it. But actually we're just training ourselves to come a bit closer to the body actually being in contact with the world around it. As a way of bringing us into the now, into being here and now. And a key part of mindfulness really is that it could also be called bodyfulness. Because actually what we're really wanting to do, if we wanted to sort of understand what happens in our minds and we just went straight to the mind, we just end up thinking and thinking and thinking about it. You know, we sort of think about the mind and we get caught in this big thinking storm. It kind of feels a bit like we live up here somewhere. So with mindfulness initially, what we're wanting to do is really develop our bodyfulness, which is kind of doing that drop down into the body and getting a sense of how the body is right now, which we tend to have to do when our health's not so good, because the body's often screaming at us or not doing what we want it to do. So it's kind of bringing us more into that relationship with what the body's like right now. What's our experience of the body? This word of embodiment comes up a bit in mindfulness now. The sense of really feeling and knowing our body.
I'm just wondering about our experience of our symptoms. What sense is that? You know, it's yeah, we feel it in our body, but it's internal, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. External, yeah. I think there's a fancy pants word they use called interoception.
Okay.
You want to have that? So it's really, it's kind of like the feeling, it's kind of like when we think of feeling, can you think of touching something and touch and feeling? There are symptoms we experience as sensations or energy or stuff in our body, don't we? You know, we kind of feel that. So it's kind of like a feeling, I think, but it's an internal feeling rather than a contact with an external feeling. Does that make sense? Yeah, when we're like now, I can feel a slightly sore ankle and I can sort of feel it twinging and pulsing and sort of things like that. So it's kind of that. And then there's a more fatigue, which can feel different in different parts of the body. You know, it's kind of like a combination of heavy and, you know, a range of other things, I guess. So it's kind of, it's a good exploration. Yeah. And while we're, you know, practicing to get this more direct experience with our body, we're not trying to get rid of thinking. Thinking's not our enemy. We're really just trying to gather our attention in a bit to our body so that we can then understand what happens in our thinking. Normally, most of our lives, we're just thinking. We're not really aware that thinking. We're caught up in the content of the thinking. We're just thinking. But when we start anchoring ourselves in the body a bit more, then we can start actually seeing the thinking, seeing the patterns of thought, the contents of thought, and whether or not they're really beneficial for us or not. So some of the benefits for health is this, especially this bodyfulness and this coming into the body, in fact bringing a bit of calming to it. It can really relax our nervous system. We can get our potential for our body to have a bit of relax. Welcome, come on in.
Sorry, mate.
And we can become more aware of the subtleties of the body, but like we're just talking about then, Rose was saying, you know, so rather than just sort of saying, I feel tired, actually, I feel really heavy in my shoulders and I can feel like my legs feel a bit sort of light, and you know, we can start to get a bit more interested in the experience of what it's like to be tired, or with pain, we can talk some about pain, and pain is obviously, for those who have chronic pain, it's a really tricky thing to deal with. And sometimes we don't want to be going into the pain because actually the pain's incessant, and sometimes it's really useful to be bringing our attention elsewhere. You know, sometimes actually cultivating hearing. You know, so instead of coming into the body, we might just spend some time just listening for sounds. So it actually takes the mind away from the pain and actually gives us something else for the mind to settle into but still be present. I'm just realising there's so much we could talk about. Anyway, it'll be good to have the discussion later because I'll be interested to hear what your response or what your thoughts are. We can recognise symptoms sooner, so you know, when we can recognise if there's pain's getting more intense, if we're getting more tired, if the brain's getting more foggy, if we're feeling more sleepy. When this is mindfulness and when we check in, we can start noticing those a bit sooner. So then we can bring as opportunity to bring a bit more of a compassionate response, rather than perhaps a habitual pushing through or whatever else might go on. We can also notice perhaps what may, if there are things or conditions that increase or decrease the severity of the symptoms. If we're really paying attention a bit more to the nuances and what's happening in the body, we might start then tuning in a bit more if there are any conditions that make it worse, or if there are any conditions that seem to make it better, either internally or externally. We might start tuning in some of those. And also we might start noticing any relationship between the thoughts, the content of our thoughts and our pattern, and what's going on in the body, or what's going on in the body and how that affects our thinking. So like I said at the start, it's all curiosity is a really useful part of this, and kindness. So it's not like we're trying to say, oh look, you're feeling this because of this. It's more like, oh, I'm feeling like this at the moment, I wonder what's going on in my mind. Or, oh, my mind's going crazy at the moment, I wonder what's happening in the body. Just bringing that sort of interested, curious approach, being a sort of friend to ourselves. So we can practice this mindfulness at any time, you know, right now, sitting there, listening to me, you can be practicing it. It can be when we're lying down, when we're walking around, when we're with people. We can also take time for intentional practice, which is when we really try and, when we really just bring the intention of having some time to be mindful, or to practice being mindful. And so we'll do a wee bit of that now. Yes, we will. Oh, I didn't bring a nice bell. No.
Not a nice bell.
Oh, that is not a nice bell. I'll do. So, just before we do a practice, are any questions or ponderings at this stage? No. Okay. So yeah, some of the I might sit down so I'm sitting not standing, a bit more. I'm sharing the same experience over here. You'll see like that. Good. So when we're practicing mindfulness when we're sitting down, it's you can do it with your eyes open or your eyes closed. If you have your eyes closed, it can sometimes help us bring our attention inward, and just to, when our eyes are open, it tends to be we're getting a bit stimulated. So we can close our eyes. Sometimes it feels a bit weird for people in a group and things. And so if you want to keep your eyes open, then just having them softly focused on the carpet in front can be a helpful way just for reducing that stimulation. So I'll just guide us through a mindfulness practice for sort of maybe 10-15 minutes, and just offer some suggestions through it, and yeah, just an invitation to see what you notice, and no requirement to do anything at all, but just an invitation to see if any of it's useful for you. So yes, initially just taking a moment to close the eyes or to soften the eyes onto the floor in front of you. And just taking a moment just to notice how you are right now. Notice perhaps just generally how the body feels, what perhaps your mood is, any particular emotion, there's much thinking or not. Not looking for anything in particular, but just kind of doing a quick, I guess, weather check, just to notice how you are in this moment. So at this moment I'm just going to close the doors just so we've got some privacy while we're doing this. Just taking a moment to just feel the body sitting in the chair. So maybe just directly experiencing the points of the areas of contact of the back and the bum and the legs, making contact with the seat. Just noticing whether things feel soft or hard perhaps. And feeling the feet on the floor. Noticing what it's like to feel the feet contacting the ground. maybe giving us some sense of being grounded and being connected to the earth. And also just noticing that we are sitting at the moment where our body's upright. And bringing an intention to have some curiosity and kindness to our experience. And maybe an invitation to take 2 or 3 deeper breaths. So just allowing a long, slow inhalation, this feels okay in your body. And a long, gentle out breath. Breathing in and allowing the lungs to expand. And on the out breath, just encouraging or inviting the body to soften and to relax. And more full in breath. And a softening, gentle, long out breath. Just allowing the breathing to settle back to its natural rhythm in this moment. And perhaps bringing the attention to some of the sensations in the body. We could start initially up in the area of the face and around the eyes. Being interested particularly at this time in maybe the slightly more subtle or perhaps pleasant sensations. Might notice perhaps some tingling or softness. Some other sensations there, just softening around any sensations that come into our awareness, around the eyes or in the forehead. Letting that attention sweep down through the face, just noticing the cheeks. The area of the mouth and the jaw. And we're not looking for anything in particular. We're just being interested if there's any particular sensation that we notice. And just bringing an intention to soften, to relax where we can. Feeling into the neck and the shoulders. Maybe allowing the shoulders to settle a little more towards the ground. And allowing the attention to move down into the hands. Noticing perhaps the sensations of the hands contacting the chair or the legs or hands in the lap. Just feeling those little areas of contact with perhaps warmth or pressure. Noticing the temperature of the hands. Maybe noticing some more subtle sensations, maybe feeling some tingling or pulsing. Experiencing the hands as hands in this moment. I like to scan down through the area of the chest and the heart and the belly. Any experiences that easily come into awareness, easily notice. Down through the legs. And then feeling the feet on the ground. see if we can notice the breath in the body. So this is just the way that the body moves when we're breathing. So it might be that you can be aware of the diaphragm rising and falling, or the belly or chest expanding, relaxing. We're not trying to breathe in any particular way. Breath doesn't have to be any particular way. Just a place that we can bring our attention to. Notice this very simple capacity of the body to breathe. And just feeling those sensations, those changing sensations that happen with each in-breath and each out-breath. Of course, you notice when you start to do this is that, well, the intention is to stay with the breath or the sensations in the body. Sooner or later we notice actually we're lost in thinking. And that's just what the mind does. So when we notice that, we just have the capacity to then remember that actually in this moment we're just training ourselves to keep coming back to the breath in the body. Just with kindness and patience, just come back into a sense of the felt body. It's useful to come back to the movements in the body with the breath, with each in-breath and each out-breath. So we can keep practicing with just returning again and again to the direct experience of the breath, all the sensations in the body. And we can also broaden out our practice to include sounds. So you might like to take a moment to just notice the sounds in the body or in the room or beyond the room. Even to go out and find them, but just noticing what sounds you're hearing in this moment. And the sound of a whirring of a fan, or voices, and wind. Allowing the sounds to arise and pass. And to get a bit spacey with that, you can just come back into the sensations in the body and experience of the breath. Continuing for a couple more minutes before we finish. So when you're ready, maybe just taking a moment to thank yourself for taking this time to explore this practice, gradually opening the eyes and allowing the light in again. Just taking a moment to notice how you're feeling. Feel free to take a moment to stretch or move if it was helpful for your body at this time. So now I've got time for just any questions about that practice, or maybe hearing from anyone about what that was like, or just questions or sharings about your experience with mindfulness, or how it might apply to you personally, or how it might apply to your symptoms, your health. Yeah, the floor's open really to what's useful. But maybe starting perhaps if there's anything about that particular practice that was, you've got any questions about, anything you noticed.